Barcelona Shakedown, January 2026. 10 teams line up with their brand new machines, and as the technical photographers start analyzing suspension layouts, they notice something. 6 teams, Audi, Red Bull, Racing Bulls, Haas, Mercedes, Ferrari, all running double pushrod suspension, front and rear, the same choice, the safe choice. Then there's Cadillac, America's newest team, and they've done the exact opposite. Pull rod front, push rod rear. Only them and Alpine dared to break the trend. So here's the question, is this genius or desperation? And did Cadillac just outsmart the entire grid or sign their own death warrant before lap 1? Let's talk about what suspension actually means in Formula One. It's not just about comfort, it's about controlling airflow, managing weight distribution, lowering center of gravity. And in 2026, with active aerodynamics and smaller ground effect floors, suspension choice is everything. Push rod or pull rod? That's the billion-dollar question. Push rod? The rod connects low on the wheel, pushes upward to the chassis. Higher mounting, easier for mechanics to access, simpler setup changes between sessions. Pull rod, the rod connects high on the wheel, pulls downward to the chassis. Lower mounting, lower center of gravity, more complicated packaging. And here's where it gets technical. Mark Temple, McLaren's technical director, said the choice between pushrod and pull rod is driven by which variation suits each team's front wing. Translation: your suspension isn't just mechanical, it's aerodynamic. The front wing for 2026 is completely new. Active aero, movable elements, drag reduction on straights, and how air flows off that wing past the suspension rods directly impacts downforce. Most teams looked at the new regulations and thought, push rod, double push rod, front and rear. But that was just the start. Because when ex-F1 technical director Gary Anderson saw Cadillac's car roll out of the garage in all-black testing livery, he noticed something the paddock wasn't ready for. Cadillac opted for a pull rod front suspension and push rod rear with some degree of anti-lift geometry on the rear wishbones, a split configuration, the rarest choice on the 2026 grid. And this is where the gamble begins. So why would Cadillac, a brand new team with zero F1 race experience, go rogue on suspension? Simple. They had nothing to lose. Every other team on the grid, they've been refining their philosophy for years, decades even. Mercedes knows what works for them. Red Bull has Adrian Newey's legacy baked into every design choice. But Cadillac? They're writing the rulebook from scratch. And according to Gary Anderson, the man who knows F1 chassis design better than almost anyone alive, with the regulations as they are for 2026, the ideal setup would be pull rod front and push rod rear, exactly what Cadillac chose. Here's why that matters. Pull rod front equals lower center of gravity at the front of the car. The chassis and driver already sit high, so bringing suspension components down low helps balance the weight distribution. Push rod rear equals better packaging around the gearbox and power unit. The engine and gearbox already sit low. Raising the rear suspension slightly creates a more horizontal center of gravity axis front to rear. Translation: the car rotates better on corner entry. And rotation, that's everything in modern F1. But here's the twist. Only one other team made the same bet: Alpine. A team that's been in F1 for decades under various names: Renault, Lotus, Benetton. If pull rod push rod is so smart, why didn't everyone do it? Because it's harder, way harder. Packaging a pull rod system on the front can be more complicated, as it's all mounted low in the chassis, while for a push rod, it's all mounted up high, so more easily accessible for setup changes. Let me translate that into English. With pushrod suspension, mechanics can access everything quickly. Springs, dampers, rockers, all up high, easy to adjust between practice sessions. Setup changes, 5 minutes. With pull rod, everything's buried low in the nose. Tight packaging, difficult access, setup changes take longer. And when you're fighting for tenths of a second in qualifying, that's a massive risk. But Cadillac looked at that trade-off and said, we'll take the aero advantage. Because here's the secret nobody's talking about. With the active aerodynamics for 2026, where you want high downforce levels in corners and minimum drag levels on straights, it's more difficult to use the front suspension members to control the wake coming off the trailing edge of the front wing. Wake management. That's the hidden war happening in the first 3 meters of every 2026 car. The new front wings produce less outwash, less air pushed to the sides, so suspension rods become critical in managing what little air you have. And pull rod, smaller cross-section, less blockage. Translation, cleaner air reaching the floor and diffuser. Cadillac didn't just gamble on suspension, they gambled on a philosophy. Lower GC, better rotation, cleaner airflow, all in exchange for harder mechanical work in the garage. But there's one more layer to this. Cadillac uses Ferrari gearbox internals, but they manufacture their own casing, which means they don't have to use the same rear suspension geometry as Ferrari. Ferrari, double pushrod. Cadillac, pull rod front, pushrod rear. Same power unit supplier, completely opposite suspension philosophy. So either Cadillac found something Ferrari missed, or they're about to learn a very expensive lesson in Melbourne. Let's talk about what happens if this works. First consequence, Cadillac becomes the story of 2026, not because they're winning, but because a rookie team outthought the establishment on a fundamental design choice. Imagine Bottas or Perez putting that car in Q3. Imagine them fighting for points in the opening races. The headlines write themselves. Rookie team embarrasses F1's biggest names. Second consequence, teams start second-guessing themselves. McLaren, Williams, Aston Martin haven't revealed their suspension yet. If Cadillac's pull rod front shows pace in Bahrain testing, expect mid-season development changes. Third consequence, Colton Herta's development timeline accelerates. Right now, he's a test driver, running F2 alongside Cadillac duties. But if the team proves competitive, if the American fan base explodes, 2027 could see an American driver in an American car fighting for podiums. That's the dream scenario.